Hey, it's Lara back with your horoscopes for the Libra Full Moon that takes place on April 16th, 2022. Thanks for being here. So this full moon will culminate on the 26th and will take us through that waning half of the moon cycle from April 16th to the 29th. And then on April 30th, we have the second new moon of the month, which is unusual unto itself. And not only is it the second new moon, it is also an eclipse. So we're heading into eclipse season. That will be the Taurus new moon eclipse on April 30th. And the next long form video that I do in a couple weeks' time will talk about that eclipse. And it will give you your horoscope, obviously, and let you know what you can expect from this eclipse season. So definitely come back for that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. But in this video, as per usual, we'll start with an overview. We will look at the big picture, right? The context that you need before you go ahead and listen to your horoscope for your individual sign. And when you do that, I really recommend that you listen for your rising sign. Your rising sign first and foremost. And if you don't know your rising sign and you just want to listen for your sun and your moon, that's totally fine too. Just understand that the rising sign, when we're doing, a general forecast like this in particular, will always be the most accurate. It will be the most reflective of what's going on in your actual life. And if you're a person who's ever wondered why your horoscope is wrong when you listen to it or read it, then you might want to check out the video I did last week. It's just a short astro nugget. It's about 10 minutes long, and it talks about why that's the case, right? So, and hint, it has something to do with rising signs. So I'll leave the link below, and you can check that out if you want. So we're going to start with the overview, and then we'll get into the forecast for each and every sign. Before we do that, if you're new here, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm Lara, and you can find me over at my website, astrologymaven.com. And when you go over there, you can sign up to my email list, get my free guide to working with the moon, and then you'll be notified of when, videos come out and courses and that kind of thing, if you're interested in that. All right. Aside from these full moon and new moon videos that I do, I started doing a new feature just last week where every second week I do a shorter video that will address a specific topic or a question. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer, you can pop those in the comments below. You can email me, just head over to my website and you can find out how to do that there. And I think what I'm planning, maybe not for the next video, but in the very near future for those videos, is doing a series on the 12 signs of the Zodiac and really taking a deep dive, sort of an everything you ever wanted to know about Aries or Virgo or Pisces or any of the 12 signs. So if you think that's something you might be interested in, let me know. All right. As of this recording, Venus is now ensconced in Pisces. Venus has sunk into the hot bath finally, after a real rough go over the last couple of months. So Venus entered Pisces April 5th. If you're listening to this, sometime in the future, April 5th, 2022. And I think that we can all sort of take a collective deep breath, and a sigh of relief, at least as it pertains to the themes that Venus deals with, right? Our relationships, our resources, aesthetic, peace, harmony, balance, these kinds of things are going to get a bit of a break. Now, that's not to say everything's going to be smooth sailing. And it definitely depends on what's going on in your particular chart. But in general, Venus in Pisces is good news. Venus is exalted in Pisces, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that and how that plays in to the energy of this Libra full moon. So the next thing going on here before the full moon is that Mercury is moving from Aries into Taurus on April 10th. And Mercury in Aries has been, fiery. So we may have found that our thoughts and our communications have been really rapid fire, or maybe a little bit more self-focused even when Mercury's in Aries, maybe a little bit more irritated and agitated, and there may have been, some butting heads and that kind of thing. And as Mercury moves into Taurus, we'll notice a shift in those things that have to do with how we communicate, and how we think, and even our self-talk. These kinds of things, right, are impacted by Venus, or by Mercury, sorry. And so when Mercury moves into Taurus, we can feel things sort of slow down a little bit, and maybe our thinking and communications turn towards more practical, earthly matters. Taurus is a fixed earth sign. And maybe we're a little bit more even headstrong, in the sense that, we're a little bit more stubborn or dug in, because Taurus is a fixed sign. So that's what's going on with Mercury. Mercury's always also implicated in this full moon, and I'll fill you in on why that's the case when we get there. The next thing, though, before the full moon that is happening on April 12th is that Jupiter and Neptune are coming into that conjunction that we've talked about before in other videos, right? So Jupiter and Neptune are meeting up in Pisces, and the last time Jupiter and Neptune met in Pisces was in 1856. This has not happened for a really long time. Jupiter and Neptune meet about every 13 years. So you can kind of look back to that time frame and think about, what was transpiring, but they haven't met in Pisces, like I said, since 1856. And why this is such a big deal and people are talking about it is because Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces, and Neptune also has an affinity for Pisces, or is the co-ruler, if you will, right? Modern astrologers look to Neptune as the ruler of Pisces, but Jupiter and Neptune are both very comfortable in Pisces. And so this is good news. Venus, very comfortable in Pisces, joining Jupiter and Neptune there. Good news. And then we've got Mars just before that full moon in Libra. Mars is moving into, you guessed it, Pisces. And that's happening on the 14th of April. So Mars will sort of, bring some sparklers to the party kind of thing, right? Fire up that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction and, the Pisces, the Venus energy as well in Pisces. So we're going to also talk about that, because all of this plays into the full moon that takes place on January 16th. And that is at 2:55 p.m. That's Eastern time. I'm using Eastern time because that's my time zone. You can adjust accordingly. And it happens at specifically 26 degrees of Libra. So between 26 and 27 degrees, but closer to the 26 degree point of Libra, which is a cardinal air sign. So like at all full moons, we have the moon in one sign, in this case Libra, and the sun across the sky in the opposite sign, which is in this case Aries. Aries and Libra are opposite signs. So at a full moon, the moon is fully reflecting the light of the sun. So that's why at a full moon, we can often have an experience of illumination, right? Something is illuminated, something is brought to light. It's brought to the surface. It may be emotions, because the moon sort of, it pulls on our emotions, just like it pulls on the tides. So we may feel emotions bubbling up at the time of a full moon. And I'm sure you've probably had that experience before. The degree to which that happens tends to depend on, how sensitive we are to these things, but also how the particular full moon is interacting with the planets in your natal chart, right? So if something is being particularly triggered, then you may feel that a little bit more, and it may feel, you may be a little bit more emotional at certain full moons than others. But in general, a full moon is, like I said, an illumination of sorts. So things reach a culmination point in the cycle, right? It's the peak of the moon cycle. And it's where things are at their crescendo, where we experience perhaps a bearing of fruit of whatever was initiated at the new moon. So that's what we look for when we're looking at a full moon. And we look specifically to what area of life can we expect that crescendo to take place in. And that all depends on what house that the planets involved occupy in your birth chart, right? So in this case, we're looking to the house that Libra sits for you, but also the house that Aries sits for you, because the sun is implicated in a full moon. We don't have a full moon unless the sun is right across the sky from the moon. So we'll look at the axis that Aries and Libra sit for you in your chart, and we'll speak to that and a few other things when we get to the individual horoscopes. So I just want to sort of break down the pieces of the puzzle here in terms of what's going on, with the specific planets at the time of this full moon. So we've got the sun in Aries. Well, the sun is what we call exalted in Aries, meaning that the sun is a welcome guest when it visits Aries, because Mars is the ruler of Aries, and Mars really likes having the sun over to its place, right? And when the sun goes to Mars's house, which is Aries, it's very comfortable there. It's like a revered guest, right? So it's like the red carpet gets rolled out, and the planet involved, in this case the sun, the planet in exaltation, feels very welcome, comfortable, at home. But it's almost like, when you're at home and you're comfortable, you have your stuff around you, and your routine and all of that, but you kind of have to do most of the work yourself. Like, you're the one cooking the meals and doing the laundry and all that stuff, but it's comfortable and you're at home. You got all the things that you need to do your job, right? So that's when a planet is at home in its home sign. But when a planet is in the sign of its exaltation, it's like you've gone to like somebody's house, or like an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast or something, where you're waited on hand and foot. So like, not only do you have, it feels like a home away from home, you have everything you need, but you also don't necessarily have to, be the only one doing the laundry and cooking the meals and all of that stuff. So my version of explaining a planet in exaltation. So, I hope that gives you an idea of what this means. The sun is exalted in Aries. And the sun in Aries speaks to our sense of individuality. It is the I am. Aries is me first, ultimately. It is the first sign of the Zodiac. It's sort of, the baby of the Zodiac, if you will. And it's related to that sense of instinct, right? So Aries, being a cardinal fire sign, is like the match that, that we strike, that initial spark that happens. It is inspiration, and it is the sort of instincts that we have that come more from just our gut feelings, kind of thing. And Aries is associated with, being a go-getter, like just going after what it wants. And it's kind of like act first, think later. That's Aries energy. It tends to be. But it can really be, fast out of the gate sort of thing. So we've got Aries being the I am piece, right? The sun exalted in Aries. So that's a good placement for the sun. And then we have the moon in Libra. And like I said, Libra is a cardinal air sign. All the cardinal signs are initiators or instigators, if you will. So Aries is a cardinal fire sign. Libra is a cardinal air sign. Then we have Cancer and Capricorn, right? Cancer being cardinal water, Capricorn being cardinal earth. And so these are the 4 seasons, you may notice, that are sort of the markers for or these are the 4 signs that are the markers for the initiation of the 4 seasons, right? So they are associated with this energy of getting started, of initiating something or instigating something. So what does Libra initiate? Libra initiates things like relationship, balance, a sense of harmony, justice, reciprocity, right? These are what the things that Libra is associated with. So while Aries is focused on the I, the me, Libra is focused on the us or the we. And so at the time of this full moon, we have those 2 energies sort of trying to balance each other out. When we have an opposition, we're looking for a way to kind of compromise, right? And bring those energies into harmony. So, which Libra is very good at. Libra is the symbol of the scales. And so Libra says, we need to kind of weigh both sides here. It's not just all about me. There are other factors to consider besides me. And whenever there's a full moon, there is this sort of relational energy in the air because the sun and the moon are trying to relate to each other. They're sort of facing off, right, in that opposition. And so we may find that we have more of a focus on the relationships in our lives around the times of full moons. And this one in particular, that may be the case because it is in the sign of Libra, the sign of relating. Libra is communicative as an air sign, right? It's social as an air sign. It is concerned with relationship, like I've said. And it's also concerned with equality and fairness and justice and balance and harmony. As an air sign, Libra is intellectual. But Libra is ruled by Venus. So this is where I'm bringing the Venus piece in. And at the beginning of the video, I talked to you about how Venus is now in Pisces, also exalted. Just like the sun is exalted in Aries, Venus is exalted in Pisces. And after the journey that Venus has had, which has been pretty rough, being sandwiched between Mars and Saturn, the 2 malefics for a long while, Venus is now able to relax a bit and be welcomed into the sign of Pisces by its ruler, Jupiter, right? And so when we look at any kind of an astrological event, so a full moon in this case, we look to what is the ruling planet of that sign. That gives us more information. In this case, that's Venus. Venus is doing well in Pisces, well dignified in Pisces at the time of this full moon. So that bodes well, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But I just want to finish off talking about Libra and this idea of bringing things into balance. Libra has the capacity to weigh both sides of the information, both sides of the argument, sort of thing, and consider everything everybody has to say. Libra also is one, there's this association with beauty. Libra likes the finer things in life, right? Aesthetically pleasing things. And you can get the sense that that's where Venus comes in. Venus is the goddess of beauty, among many other things, right? Love, beauty, those sorts of things. Now, the downside to Libra can be, and every sign has both, sort of an optimal way of being in the world, and then some qualities that can be considered the shadow side, if you will, or how that sign may present when it's not at its best. So in this case, the downside when we're talking about Libra is that in this effort to keep everything fair and equal and balanced, there may be a tendency to people please because Libra doesn't want to rock the boat, doesn't want to upset anybody. And there may be a tendency to fence sit. So having difficulty making decisions or, kind of leaving it up to other people because, again, they don't want to upset. They don't want to be the one to shift the balance. So that's something to be mindful of when we're talking about Libra energy. Now, we were talking about planets in exaltation. Venus exalted in Pisces, the sun exalted in Aries. Well, it's interesting that the planet that is exalted in the sign of Libra is Saturn. This seems unusual if you know anything about Saturn as being sort of the taskmaster, the lord of karma. Saturn is the planet that kind of throws up the obstacles, says, whoa, slow down, not so quick, or no, you can't have it this way or go that way or what have you. There's more work to be done. Saturn likes it when we do the adulting kind of thing. So what Saturn likes about being in Libra is that Libra has this sort of intellectual, justice-oriented quality about it. So Saturn is very comfortable there and welcome in Libra sign. So I just thought I'd throw that in there since we're talking about planets in exaltation. Now, as I mentioned, Venus is the ruler of this full moon. Venus, goddess of love, beauty, our resources, harmony, peace, desire, pleasure, all of those things. And this bodes well, right, for this full moon. Whatever culmination or crescendo is being reached right now, whatever is illuminated at the time of this full moon, seems to have this compassionate, Venus is in Pisces, just sort of, pleasing kind of vibe going on. But it may also feel a little bit exhilarating or exciting or even daring on some level because we do have the sun across from the moon, and the sun is, exalted in the fire sign of Aries. And moreover, the ruler of Aries, which is Mars, will also be in Pisces at the time of this full moon. So you see how all of that comes together, right? All the pieces I was talking about initially, they're all coming into play at the time of this full moon. But I don't want to be a downer, but I have to tell you that there is also something a little bit more intense going on at the time of this full moon. And that is that the sun and the moon are in a square, a pretty tight square to Pluto. So cue dramatic music. Pluto's in Capricorn. Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. And it's like this long, slow, arduous overhaul that's going on of the Capricorn area of our chart, right? And at the time of this full moon, Pluto's nearing the end of its journey through Capricorn. It will move out of Capricorn next year. But at the time of this full moon, right at the last couple of degrees there, it's in a square. And it's about to station retrograde as well. So it's in a square to the full moon, a square to the sun and the moon. What does that mean? Well, squares are 90-degree angles. Those are conversations of tension between the planets. When planets are in square to each other, and then in this case, we call it a T-square because there's two planets in square to the moon, not just one. It's like being backed into a corner energy where something's got to give. It is, recommended when we're dealing with the energy of a square that we take action to resolve that tension rather than letting it happen to us. I mean, sometimes we can't control these things, but, in the event that something more surprising happens or unexpected, then it's all in how we respond to it, right? Respond rather than react. You've probably heard many people say that before, but that's because it's good advice. So we've got this square to Pluto happening. And so this has this feeling of emotional catharsis, some kind of intensity. Like I said, Pluto can be quite intense. And it is potentially surrounding these themes of relationship, issues of justice, peace, balance, desire, around whatever is culminating right now at the time of the full moon. There is a piece of the puzzle that is feeling like a bit of a tight spot that we need to work our way out of. The square to Pluto tends to show us sort of what needs to be purged Pluto has a purgative quality to it, among other things, what needs to be purged from the depths. And we can experience issues or witness issues of power dynamics going on with Pluto as well. There can be very titanic shifts that happen. And that's a word that I've heard Richard Tarnas use before in describing Pluto. This notion of like a titanic sort of energy, right? So one of the things that we often associate with Pluto, and it tends to be the cliche word that everybody uses, but again, cliches are cliches for a reason, is transformation. And so there is a suggestion of a big transformation that can happen at the time of this full moon. Where Pluto sits, it's sort of alchemizing that area of life for us. So this transformation may be one that's intense, but it can also be exciting, exhilarating, like I mentioned. It can be just and fortunate and pleasant because of the fact that the ruler of the full moon is in Pisces, and that the ruler of Aries, where the sun is also in Pisces, and then the Jupiter Neptune conjunction, like we talked about. So it's not like it's all bad, right? It may be sort of big and intense. And then we also have, I have to let you know this, that one potential of all of that energy swimming around in Pisces is a little bit of confusion, a little bit of illusion, a tendency towards escapism, right? And hey, nothing wrong with a little escapism. We could all use it sometimes, but just be wise about it, is what I'll say. So I think that one of the things I want to remind you of or mention to you, is I talked in the past couple of videos. I talked in the Virgo, particularly the Virgo full moon video, about looking for the helpers. And you may want to check out also the Pisces new moon video, because we've got a lot of Pisces energy going on right now. If you missed that, and I'll drop the links to both of those below. But I talked in the Virgo new moon or full moon video specifically about looking for the helpers, right? A Mr. Rogers term. So hint, the helpers are in Pisces. So whatever house Pisces sits in your chart is where this, this really welcome kind of, like it's like a warm rain coming down after a dry spell. So hang on to that, right? Like use it kind of thing while it's available to us. And if you don't have a clue what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, what house this sits for you and all of that, then, if you don't have any knowledge of your birth chart, if you don't know your chart, or if you don't even really know what a birth chart is, then you might want to check out my course that I made. And it is an on-demand course. So as soon as you purchase the course, you get access to the whole thing. It's 3 video lessons complete with PDFs that you can print out if you want. There's a welcome message from me, and there's a bonus that I've given you there as well. So this course is all about sort of like, what the heck is your birth chart, right? And why do you need it? For me, I think it's like essential. At this point in my life, I feel like it's essential for everybody to have a birth chart. And I explain to you in that course why that's the case. But I also walk you through how to get yours online for free with my particular favorite, free online software. But it's also, the course also addresses the importance of getting an accurate chart. This is one of the things that a lot of people, I think they don't talk about enough. It's like, you might read an article, you may subscribe to somebody's email list or listen to somebody on YouTube, and they go, oh yeah, just go here and get your free birth chart. Fair, but there's more to it than that. If you really want to start out with a strong foundation, if you're just starting out in astrology, or even if, you've been doing this for a little while, and you want to hear a different perspective, it's like, if you don't have an accurate chart to begin with, you're starting off on the right foot. And when you go to these online places to get your chart, there's a lot of choices that you have to make to put information in. And, to know what house system to use and all of this kind of thing. So in this course, I walk you through all of that step by step. I have actually inserted a separate video in the course where I specifically take you through that. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd love it if you'd go over to my website and check that out, and I'll put the link below. Anyway, once you have all of that information, watching these videos or reading horoscopes will make so much more sense to you, and you'll get so much more value from it. All right, let's get into the horoscopes now for each of the signs. And I want to let you know that if you've got placements, right? So significant placements, if you've got your sun, your moon, your ascendant, right? Your rising sign, if you've got a cluster of planets or any of your personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, around the 26 degree mark of Libra, most notably, but also the other cardinal signs, Aries and Cancer and Capricorn, then you are likely to really feel this full moon in Libra more potently, more personally. Now, that's not to say the rest of us are not going to feel it, because, there's a lot going on here. But we all experience any new moon or full moon anytime it happens. It happens in a specific area of our chart. So I'm going to go through each sign. I'm going to speak to the full moon itself. So that axis where the moon is sitting, where the full moon is actually culminating for you, and that axis because the sun is across the sky. And I'm also going to remind you where you may be experiencing, not maybe, you are experiencing, whether you are sort of consciously aware of it or not, that deep transformation and evolution going on because of Pluto in the Capricorn area of your chart. And if you look back retrospectively, once you get a sense of where is this happening, if you don't already know, then you'll probably go, oh, yeah, I see it now, right? So we're going to talk about the Pluto piece briefly, and I'm also going to remind you about where the helpers are right now in Pisces, because I think it's just, we've been through enough, and we could all use some good news. So let's keep talking about that while we can. All right, we're going to start with Libra in this case, because Libra, this is your full moon, right? And you are having this full moon, if you're a Libra rising, in your first house. So there is something culminating here, Libra, that has directly to do with you. The first house is all about you. It's about how you interface with the world, right? How the world perceives you, how you come at the world. It has to do with your physical body, because the first house represents sort of like our physical incarnation. And so it speaks to our physical vitality, our appearance, these sorts of things, and our trajectory in life, right? Sort of, like I said, how we come at the world, how we come at life. So when an event happens in the first house, it can impact just about anything because it's all about us. So this full moon moment in your first house is in direct relation. Whatever's coming to the surface now, whatever's blossoming, has to do with the seeds that were planted back at either the Aries new moon in some way. At least a piece of it might have to do with that. The Aries new moon that took place on April 1st, right? Or if you look back like 6 months to the Libra new moon on October 6th, 2021, you may get a sense of what was initiated then, what was instigated either by me or, the universe kind of thing. And where are things at now? What's culminating now in relation to that? What's reaching a crescendo? And this is specifically happening. So the full moon is in the first house, like I mentioned, but then you've got the sun across the sky in the 7th house of the other, right? So this is the relationship axis. You may feel some heightened intensity or a culmination of sorts in terms of relationships in your life. And that may be the relationship you have with yourself. It may be the relationship, a relationship with a significant other, or close friends, family members, business associates. These sorts of things can be implicated here as well. So think about that. What's going on in your life around those themes and what's culminating now. What's also happening is that Pluto piece, right? Pluto in square to the sun and the moon. So the 4th house is where Pluto sits for you, and that's Capricorn in your chart as a Libra rising. And Pluto is this long, slow transformation that's happening there in that 4th house of home, family, ancestry, roots, your, parents or parenting, your sense of emotional security, real estate, place of living. These kinds of things are 4th house themes. So that's where Pluto is doing this long overhaul, this alchemizing that those themes in your life. And at the time of this full moon, it's intention to the full moon. So there may be something going on here around relationship and those 4th house themes. And it could really be quite profound. It could be a bit intense. It could bring things up from the underworld, so to speak. It could be very transformative as well. So that's the Pluto piece. And then let's finish off with, once again, reminding you, where are the helpers? Where's this warm rain sort of falling in your chart right now? And that's in Pisces, which is in your 6th house, right? Where we've got the ruler of this full moon, Venus, the ruler of Aries, where the sun is, Mars, and then the Jupiter Neptune conjunction as well happening there. So your 6th house is where this is all happening. So look for some, look for the pleasantries, look for the grace, the ease, these sorts of things, all happening around themes of health and wellness, your daily routine, the daily grind, your daily work, whether that be paid work or unpaid work, how you are in service, even surrounding pets, potentially, if that's a relevant theme for you. So this is where we're getting, we can kind of crawl into our, our hot tub, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, or literally, if you're lucky enough to have one, and just kind of relax for a bit and find some solace there, even if there's other things going on in life that may be a little less than ideal, right? So that's everything happening for you, Libra. If you're just, if you clicked on the timestamp for your sign and you haven't listened to the intro, I really encourage you to please listen to the intro. Otherwise, you miss all the really important context, right? And you can't utilize this energy to its fullest if you do that. So, okay, leaving it there and moving on to Virgo. So Virgo rising, your full moon moment is happening in relation to your 2nd house because the moon is sitting in Libra, which is your 2nd house in your chart as a Virgo rising. So the culmination, the illumination, the rise, the sort of the emotional catharsis, even if you will, the blossoming, the bearing of fruit is happening around themes of your personal resources, right? That's the 2nd house. The money you make from your skills and talents, from your business or what have you. It is about how you value yourself. So your sense of self-worth, maybe the prices you charge or that kind of thing. It could be also related to your material possessions. It's the 2nd house is sort of what we possess, what we own, and what we place value on, right? What we consider valuable. So this is where the full moon is culminating for you. And then you've got the sun across the sky, exalted in Aries in your 8th house. So the 8th house speaks to other people's resources. It speaks to your entanglements with other people rather than, your resources and what you possess. It is about, our intimate connections with other people and sort of those, it's often associated with this sense of death and rebirth, that notion of, like what's buried in the psyche and needs to be healed can be 8th house related as well. But generally speaking, we often see themes of other people's resources. So this can be anything like taxes, insurance, inheritance, debt, loans, bursaries, scholarships, lottery winnings. Don't get too excited, but it is a possibility when we're talking about the eighth house. But so this is the other side of the coin here. And we're talking about then with this opposition between the sun and the moon, something sort of being restored to balance, or the need for that to happen, in terms of, really namely resources and worth and value and that sort of thing. So whatever this is directly related to something that was initiated or instigated a couple of weeks ago at the new moon in Aries, but probably even more so, whatever was initiated back at the new moon in Libra on October 6th, 2021. So around that time, think about what got off the ground, what was initiated either by you or the universe in relation to those second house themes, right? Personal resources and value. And then you've got intention with this energy, Pluto in your fifth house. So Pluto's been making the long, slow journey through Capricorn, which is your fifth house, since 2008, alchemizing that area of the chart, right? Really transforming things, really bringing things to the surface. And as a Virgo rising, I'm seeing this, like, even retrospectively, like looking back going, wow, yeah, a lot has happened there in that time. And at this full moon moment, it's a sort of like a tight spot that needs to be moved through and can really be a catalyst, right? For big evolutionary leaps sort of thing. And that fifth house, because I don't think I said yet what that's about, is speaking to themes of children. So your own children or children in your life, even issues around, pregnancy, childbearing, that kind of thing. Anything we create. So our creative self-expression, how we sort of shine our light as an individual out in the world. The fifth house speaks to our pleasures, like what we enjoy in life and how we have fun in life. What sort of sparks joy for us, if you will. It can be hobbies, sports, special interests, those sorts of things. So, and romance is also implicated in the fifth house. So these are all themes for Virgo rising that have been experiencing this long, slow turning over of the soil for, since 2008. And this is a moment at the full moon where there's a real catalyst happening there. And then, to finish off, we'll circle back to the goodness that's happening over in Pisces. And for you, that's the seventh house. So your house of one-to-one relationships, right? This is like your significant other, if that applies, close friends and family members, sort of those really tight relationships you have. It could be business associates as well. It could also speak to contracts and agreements when we're talking about the seventh house. And it may even be about rivals, because that's also something that falls into the seventh house. And I'm talking about like the rivals that, you're in competition with, kind of thing. So this is where Jupiter and Neptune are meeting out. This is where the ruler of this full moon is exalted in Pisces, right? Venus, exalted in Pisces, rules this full moon. And this is where Mars, who rules Aries, where the sun is exalted at this full moon, are all having a party, in the hot tub with sparklers, kind of thing. So it's like, look to those themes, relationship, as being having the potential to be really healing and beneficial around this time, even if there's other things that are going on that may feel a little bit difficult, So, because unfortunately, that's life. It's not all good all the time, but we have to look for the sweet spots, right? Intentionally. So for you, that's the seventh house around this time. Okay, we're going to move on to Leo now. Leo, for you, this full moon is culminating in your third house. And so that's where Libra sits for you, is that third house, which speaks to your immediate environment, right? And sort of the people in it and communications. the third house is a busy, busy place. So it encompasses things like, our siblings and cousins and neighbors and community members and peers, like people that are sort of on the same level as us, if you will. It also encompasses our communications, the back and forth exchanges that happen on the daily, right? And the vehicles of communication, the technology that's involved there, the sort of moving parts, vehicles fall into this house, and sort of short jaunts that we take, short trips, as well as education. So when we're talking about the third house, we're talking about education that is more the early years variety, like elementary school, high school, learning the basics, the 101 of something, right? So that's where the full moon moment is happening for you. The crescendo is being reached there, the blossoming, the bearing of fruit is around those themes. Now, this is directly related to the new moon in Aries, April 1st. So something, at least a piece of this puzzle was initiated around that time. And then if you look back like 6 months to the October 6th, 2021 new moon in Libra, which is the same area of the chart for you, you'll get a sense of what got off the ground then that's reaching this culmination point, this high point right now, right? As it relates to those third house themes. And then we also have potentially the ninth house implicated, because this is on an axis of third house, ninth house across the sky from the third. So it's this axis of the mind, really. And we're looking at in the ninth house, whereas the third house is sort of more closer to home. The ninth house is farther away. So long distance travel, people at a distance, people that are different from you in some way, different cultures, that sort of thing. Or experiences that expand your horizons in some way. Higher education, publishing, teachers, are you being the teacher? Issues around justice and even religion can come up when we're talking about the ninth house. So that's where the sun is. There's this kind of like close to home, far away thing happening. What's in our immediate environment, what we are really comfortable with on the day-to-day versus sort of what's out there to expand our horizons, right? This is what's going on at the time of this full moon. And then you've got Pluto doing the long, slow transformation in your sixth house since 2008. Pluto has been alchemizing this area of life for you. And at the time of this full moon, it is in a tense conversation with the full moon, like I talked about in the intro. So definitely don't skip the intro. But the sixth house speaks to your health and wellness. It speaks to your daily routine and work life, and that can be paid or unpaid work. It's how we are in service. Yeah, and it also can speak to pets as well in the sixth house, if that's something relevant for you. And so we're looking at some sort of catalyzing event or something big coming up around this time that may feel like a bit of a tight spot to work through, right, as it relates to this full moon, or something that can really kind of propel us forward. It can be like a big evolutionary leap almost, or a big something coming up from under the surface. And then we've got, in your case, the party in Pisces happening in the 8th house, right? So all that goodness of Venus exalted in Pisces, Venus being the ruler of this full moon, Mars being the ruler of Aries, where the sun is exalted at the full moon, also in Pisces, Jupiter and Neptune meeting up in Pisces, right? The co-rulers there, like we talked about all this in the intro. So this is where you're looking for the opportunity to kind of like breathe a sigh of relief, to feel some that warm rain after the dry spell, like I mentioned. And that is in relation to other people's resources and your intimate entanglements with other people and your psychological sort of depths. So this is something, occurring in the realm of potentially things like loans, taxes, insurance, inheritance, wills, bursaries, scholarships, lottery. I don't know why I keep saying that today. I don't often say that, but it is an 8th house thing, rare. But so there is something going on here in relation to those themes, in relation to like a transformational energy, in relation to a something that may feel like in the eighth house, it's a place where we're often sort of, it's out of our control, the things that transpire there. And so this can feel like some welcome relief there in some way, right? That's what's going on in your eighth house. And so that's the big picture, or the whole picture rather, of this full moon, and what's happening around this time for you, Leo. So we're going to leave that there. We're going to move on to Cancer. Cancer, for you, the full moon is culminating in your fourth house. So the moon in Libra is in your fourth. The sun is across the sky in the 10th house, right? Exalted in Aries. And this is the axis of your private life, your home, your family, your roots, your ancestry, parenting, your sense of emotional security. These are all fourth house themes. That's where the full moon's culminating, as opposed to the 10th house, your public life, the legacy you wish to leave, your relationship to authority and authority figures and your own authority, right? Career matters in the 10th house. So there's a kind of a bit of a push and pull going on here, and a need for bringing these energies into harmony and for balancing that out at this full moon. But what's culminating in the fourth house, whatever's coming to pass, whatever's being illuminated, bearing fruit, is related directly to, at least in some ways, something that was initiated around the time of the Aries new moon, around April 1st. But moreover, the Libra new moon, October 6th, 2021, because that happened in the same area of your chart. So think back, what was initiated then? What was instigated either by you or outside forces that is now reaching a crescendo at the time of this full moon? And the other pieces of the puzzle here for you, Cancer rising, are first Pluto in square to this full moon. And for you, that's sitting in the 7th house, right? So Pluto's been doing an overhaul, a long, slow overhaul and alchemizing of your, relationships. Because the 7th house speaks to our one-to-one close relationships. Things like our significant other, things like our, our business associates, our close friends and family members, contracts and agreements. These are all 7th house themes. Pluto's been overhauling all of that and bringing things up from the depths there. So at the time of this full moon, Pluto is like catalyzing something in terms of relationships, and as that relates to 4th, 10th house for you. There is an opportunity here for maybe a big reveal, or maybe just a big, like, some kind of, I use the word Titanic in the intro, some kind of Titanic occurrence that may be related to this full moon and the energies surrounding it. Now, this isn't something new per se, because Pluto's been in this area of the chart for you since 2008. Like, what's going on here. You might have to pause for a hot minute and think back, but what's going on. This is not something that's a surprise. But it's a moment where there can be like a tight spot to get out of, because it's a square energy. But it may ultimately, like I said, be a big catalyst. And then you've got the party happening over in the hot tub with the sparklers in your 9th house of, that's where Pisces is for you. And that speaks to, it could be travel, it could be higher education, it could be people at a distance, expanding your horizons in some capacity, issues around justice, issues around, even religion, your worldview, these sorts of things. All of that is getting this lovely, welcome, warm rain happening. I like to use that analogy because we've got the ruler of this full moon there, exalted in Pisces. We've got Mars, which rules Aries, where the sun is currently exalted in Pisces. We've got Jupiter and Neptune in a conjunction there in Pisces. So, if there's other things that are feeling a bit intense, that those 9th house themes can feel like welcome relief on some level, right? They can be bringing the good stuff. So just remember that. All right, Cancer, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to move to Gemini now, where Gemini, we've got the full moon culminating for you in your 5th house. So let me just take a quick sip of water. Thanks. The 5th house speaks to themes of children. Your children, other people's children, children you're associated with in some capacity, pregnancy, childbearing, that kind of thing. It also speaks to your creative self-expression, how you sort of shine as an individual out in the world, creative projects. It is about what sparks joy for you in life, your pleasure pursuits, and things like hobbies, special interests, sports, even romantic pursuits are 5th house related. And this is happening on this axis of the 5th and 11th. So the full moon itself is culminating there. Something's coming to the surface. Something is coming to pass. There is a crescendo moment, a bearing of fruit happening in that 5th house. And then it may also involve 11th house themes, right? It's an axis, like I said at the beginning, where the 11th house is all about the group, the friends, potentially, the associates, the networks, the clubs, the organizations, the allies and supporters. It can also be about your kids' friends as well. I've seen that many, many times in my own life and in other people's charts as well. So that's the axis this is happening on, right? Something's going on there. Something's coming to pass as it relates to the Aries new moon that happened April 1st. So something, a piece of this puzzle at least, was instigated then. And then if you look back 6 months to the October 6th new moon that happened in Libra, same area of the chart for you, the 5th house. Think about what was initiated then, either by you or, powers outside your control kind of thing. But what got off the ground then that is now reaching this culmination point, right? At the time of the full moon. And then you've got Pluto in your 8th house in square to this full moon. So this is where the bit of intensity is happening. But this is not something new because Pluto has been in your 8th house since 2008. So there is this big transformation, this alchemizing going on in your 8th house. It's a slow burn kind of thing, but it's very, very profound. And it speaks to 8th house themes of your entanglements with other people, psychological wounding and healing, and the transformation that can happen around that. But very much also about other people's resources. So this is things like your debt, taxes, loans, wills, inheritance, bursaries, scholarships, lottery. These are all the themes that 8th house, it's like the 8th house is the place where things tend to be kind of outside of our control and we have to surrender in some way. Like we're not in the driver's seat necessarily in the 8th house. So whatever's going on here at this moment in time of the full moon can be, can feel a bit tense. It's like being backed into a corner, but take heart, because squares are dynamic conversations that have the capacity to really catapult us forward. So there can be like quite literally some kind of like a major evolutionary leap that happens here at the time of this full moon, but it may feel a little bit, intense. But then in your case, all of that Pisces sweet spot, right, is happening in your 10th house. So we've got Venus exalted in Pisces, Mars, and Venus is the ruler of this full moon, right? Mars, which is Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, where the sun is exalted at the time of this full moon, and Jupiter, Neptune, co-rulers of Pisces, meeting up in Pisces at the time of this full moon. So there's a lot of goodness going on in Pisces. And for you, that's your 10th house of your public life, the legacy you wish to leave, your relationship to authority and authority figures and your own authority, your career, if that pertains to you. These are the themes that are being really wrapped in a warm sort of blanket there for a while in Pisces. So if other things are feeling difficult, then take solace in that, right? That's where you're looking for that really soothing sort of energy to come in. All right, so I'm going to leave that there, Gemini, and I'm going to move to Taurus now, where Taurus, we have the new moon happening in your 6th house. Sorry, not new moon, full moon. So the full moon is culminating in your 6th house, Taurus. This is surrounding themes of health and wellness for you. It is about your daily routine, the daily grind, the work you do on the day-to-day, whether that be paid work or unpaid work, or maybe some of both. It is how you are in service. It can be about pets as well in the 6th house. So these are all the themes, right, to look to. Opposite the 12th house, where the sun is right now at the time of this full moon. And the sun is, exalted in that 12th house. So that's good. But the 12th house is where the 6th house is sort of the daily routine. The 12th house is, how we escape that routine. And in some way, shape, or form. This is the axis that I often refer to as sort of practical magic, or order, 6th house, 12th house, chaos. This axis often speaks to issues of health and well-being in a sort of holistic way when we consider both sides of the coin, both our physical health, which is generally related more to the 6th house, and then our emotional, mental health, even spiritual health we're talking here. So there's something going on around these themes, something culminating here for you. And it is in direct relation to something that transpired, that was initiated, at least partly, at the Aries new moon back around April 1st. And then if you look back further to the October 6th, 2021, new moon in Libra, which also happened in your 6th house, you can maybe get a sense of what got off the ground there, what was initiated either by you or, powers beyond your control kind of thing. But what came into your awareness, what new thing got off the ground or was planted or intended for or conceived of that is now reaching this culmination point, this illumination, this, point in the cycle where it's at its fullest. It could be a blossoming of sorts. So that's the full moon. And then we've got, in relation to that, you've got Pluto in your 9th house, which is where Capricorn sits in your chart as a Taurus rising. So Pluto has been doing this long, slow alchemizing of your 9th house since 2008. And that has to do with themes of higher learning, potentially expanding your horizons, teachers teaching, you being the teacher, publishing, travel, usually long distance travel, people and places that are foreign to you in some capacity, issues around justice, issues around religion, even your worldview. So these are 9th house themes, and Pluto's been turning over the soil there and really bringing things up from beneath the surface. So there's a bit of a kind of like a purge and a real transformation happening. So it's not new to you. It's been going on for a long time. But at the time of this full moon, there may be a moment of intensity involved, right? With Pluto in square to the sun and the moon, and a bit of a corner you need to work yourself out of, or a bit of a something that needs action in order to resolve the tension. But because it's Pluto, like it could be this catalyzing moment or this moment of an evolutionary leap of sorts even happening. So that's Sun, Moon, Pluto. But then we've got this really nice conglomeration of planets happening in Pisces, which for you is the 11th house, right? That's where everybody's kind of, sinking into the hot tub with the sparklers over there in Pisces, and where you can look for the sweet spot in your life right now. And, that's the ruler of the full moon, Venus, is there, exalted in Pisces. Mars is there in Pisces, and Mars is the ruler of Aries, where the sun is exalted at this full moon. And then you've got also Jupiter and Neptune, the co-rulers of Pisces, meeting up there. So lots of really lovely stuff happening in Pisces. And your 11th house, which is your allies, your supporters, your friends, the group, networks, this kind of thing, your hopes and dreams for the future. So that's a really lovely thing going on, even if there may be some intensity going on, surrounding other things in life right now. Okay, Taurus, that's for you. Moving on to Aries now. Aries, for you, you have this full moon culminating in your 7th house. And so there is a illumination happening, a full moon sort of crescendo moment around close personal relationships or contracts and agreements, or rivals, 7th house. But 7th house is very much about sort of the other people in our lives that we are in a more close bond with. So significant other, close, like I said, close friends and family members, business associates, potentially even. So something got off the ground, at least part of it, back at the Aries new moon, right? Your new moon, around April 1st, that is related to this, whatever's culminating now. But if you look back 6 months to the October 6th, 2021 new moon in Libra, which is happening in the same area of the chart for you, Libra sits in the 7th, you can get a sense of what was initiated then around relationship, right? Or contracts and agreements. What was conceived of that is now bearing fruit, or now reaching this fever pitch, or this illumination, or the big reveal, or whatever you want to call it, a full moon moment. And then also implicated here is you, because obviously when we're talking relationship, there's usually more than one person involved, although we have a relationship to ourselves. And that's what the first house is about, right? Where the sun is sitting across the sky from the moon. So there is this balancing act that's going on right now, and a need for kind of compromise between you and the other, between the me and the we, the I and the you in your life, sort of thing. So, and it may have something to do with, your like how you interface with the world, how the world perceives you, your appearance, these sorts of things may be implicated as well. But the other piece that's happening, well, there's 2 other things, right, that we kind of broke down in the intro. So don't skip that, please, because that's the context for all of what I'm saying here. But you've got Pluto in your 10th house in square to this full moon. Now, Pluto has been in your 10th house since 2008, and it has been really composting things there. It has been alchemizing things, transforming things in relation to your career, your public persona and reputation, the legacy you wish to leave, authority and authority figures in your life, your sense of authority in the world. These are all 10th house themes, and Pluto has been in there, the long, slow transformation happening. So whatever is in tension right now with this full moon, because Pluto's in a square, so there can be this like feeling of, something's got to give, or being sort of backed into a corner a little bit, and just intensity in general. It relates to those 10th house themes. But if you look back, like, this is not a new thing that's going on, right? So as that's happening, and it may be a big opportunity for like a big evolutionary leap in some way with regards to your career and relationship on some level. But as all of that's happening, you have all of the pleasantries going on in your 12th house, which is where Pisces sits for you, right? And Pisces, as we spoke about in the intro, is where the ruler of this full moon is, Venus, exalted in Pisces. Also where Mars is sitting, which is the ruler of Aries, your sign, which is where the sun is exalted at the time of this full moon. And then you have Jupiter and Neptune together as well, the co-rulers of Pisces. So really, this is the sweet spot, right, for you. And the 12th house is about how we retreat from our daily grind, among other things. So it can be about taking a break, a stepping back, a vacation. It could be, spending some time in solitude. It can be it can be about like endings and closures and losses. But in this case, because all of this goodness is happening in Pisces, you know, there is this grace that comes along with it. You know, if that happens to be the case, the 12th house in a practical sense can speak to places that are sort of tucked away from the world, as I like to phrase it. And those would be things like a retreat center of sorts, like a spiritual retreat center, some kind of retreat, you know. It could be a vacation home. It could be like things like hospitals, long-term care facilities, rehab facilities, these sorts of things as well could be implicated here. But that is where goodness is happening, you know, and ideally not the downside of all of this watery Pisces energy, which could be escapism, right? And like I said in the intro, that's perfectly acceptable and we all need it sometimes, but it's just be wise about how that is playing out for you, right? Okay, so that's for you, Aries. And we're going to move to Pisces now, where Pisces, you have the full moon culminating in your 8th house. So Pisces rising. Libra sits in the 8th house for you, right? So that's where this full moon is making its appearance. Moon in Libra in the 8th, sun across the sky, and Aries in the 2nd. This is the axis of resources. Your resources, which is the 2nd house, that's where the sun is sitting, and what you value and your sense of self-worth, you know, what you own, what you possess, and other people's resources. Things like inheritance, wills, loans, taxes, debt, insurance, bursaries, scholarships, lottery, these sorts of things are all 8th house. 8th house, where the full moon is culminating for you, is a place where we often feel like things are not within our control. There may be psychological sort of, you know, wounding and the healing that is necessary to overcome it. These are 8th house themes, our entanglements with other people. So whatever is transpiring, you know, that, and one more thing I should say about the 8th house is like, the 8th house speaks to like this transformational piece, you know, the death and rebirth cycle kind of thing. So with this full moon culminating there is something coming to pass, something being, something blossoming, you know, something rising up to be noticed or dealt with. And it has to do with those 8th house themes. So whatever this is related to perhaps something that was instigated, at least in part, a couple of weeks ago, around April 1st at the Aries new moon, right? But if you look back 6 months to the October 6th, 2021 new moon in Libra, that new moon happened in the same area of the chart for you, the 8th house. So something got off the ground then, something was initiated or instigated, either by you or by the universe, that speaks to these 8th house themes, right? And now there is this crescendo moment in relation to that happening. So something about resources, something about your worth and other people's worth, and how that may be entangled in some way. Something about, you know, your sense of self-worth and how that is entangled, again, with other people. So the other piece here, there's 2 other pieces. One is Pluto in a tense conversation with the full moon in a square to the sun and the moon, and Pluto is sitting in your 11th house. So Pluto has been kind of slowly churning over this 11th house since 2008 and transforming and alchemizing things there. And that 11th house is all about the group. It's about friends, associates, networks, clubs, organizations that you may be involved in. It's about your allies and supporters. It's about your hopes and dreams for the future. It's potentially about your children's friends. So you've got something going on here that's been going on for quite a while, but at the time of this full moon, it's reaching like a tight spot, an intense moment. But this intense moment, right? Like it has to be kind of dealt with. The energy has to be dispersed, but it could be a real catalyst. It could be a sort of a phrase I've used with other signs is it could be like an evolutionary leap of sorts, even when we're talking about Pluto here. But Pluto tends to bring some intensity. So that's the Pluto piece. But to finish off, let's talk about all the stuff that's going on in Pisces, your sign, which is the sweet spot, right? I mean, everybody wishes they were Pisces right now, Pisces rising. I'm a Pisces sun, but, so good. But like Pisces rising, that's really amazing because it's all about you. So you've got Venus in your sign right now, which is the ruler of this full moon. Venus is exalted in your sign. You have Mars at the time of this full moon in your sign. Mars rules Aries, where the sun is at this full moon. The sun is exalted in Aries. You've got Jupiter, Neptune in a conjunction in your sign. Hasn't happened since 1856, Pisces. This is a big old deal. And in your first house, if you're a Pisces rising, right? So there's goodness here. There's a sense of relief. There can be a real, like I said, sweet spot all around you and how you come at the world, how the world perceives you. It can be how you, like your physical well-being and vitality, right? How you interface with the world, your trajectory kind of thing. So when things happen in the first house, it can impact the rest of life because it's like the jumping off point for everything else. And so that's where all this, the hot tub party with the sparklers and the wine is happening. Pisces is in your sign. So, I would love to know if you are a Pisces rising, or even if you're a Pisces sun, or if you're somebody that has a lot of energy in Pisces. I'd be so curious to know what's going on for you right now. If you want to leave me a comment, what you notice happening around the full moon and just in the month of April, sort of in general, because there's so much happening in your sign. So that is for you, Pisces. And I'm going to leave that there and move on to Aquarius. Aquarius, for you, you've got the full moon culminating in your 9th house. So, this is happening on the 9th third axis, which is the axis of the mind. It is the axis of, in some ways, travel and education as well, because both the 9th house, sorry for the squeaking chair, 9th house and the 3rd house speak to those themes. So you've got the 9th house, the full moon in the 9th house, bringing to a culmination, bearing a fruit, a crescendo, an illumination. And it's all about expanding your horizons in some way in the 9th house. It's about potentially travel, usually longer distance travel, about people and places that are sort of foreign to you in some way, and what you may, learn from them or experience through them. It's about higher education. It's about, teaching, learning, publishing, potentially things like justice and even, religious or worldview, that kind of thing, religion or worldview. So those are the themes that this full moon is highlighting. And whatever this is directly associated with, at least in part, with something that was initiated around the April 1st Aries new moon a couple weeks ago, but also and moreover the Libra new moon that happened October 6th, 2021, because it happened in the same house, right? Libra sits in the 9th for you. So think about like what was initiated then, what first little, inklings or sparks happened around these 9th house themes, something you initiated or something that was sort of instigated beyond your control, but something came into your awareness and now it's reaching this full moon moment. And then you've got Pluto in your 12th house. So, which is in a tense conversation with this full moon, like I spoke about in the intro. It's in a square, right? And Pluto has been on this long journey through your 12th house since 2008, transforming things, composting things, alchemizing things. And when I say things, what do I mean? Well, 12th house themes of endings, losses, culminations, issues around, wellness, like mental, emotional, spiritual wellness, issues around solitude, how you retreat from the daily routine and the daily grind. So, I mean, sometimes this is about like vacations and things like that, right? Stepping back from the world, what goes on behind closed doors. Sometimes, institutions like hospitals or hospices or spiritual retreat centers or even, rehab facilities, various things like this can be implicated in the 12th house as well. So, I mean, it's not an easy place for Pluto, I'm going to be honest with you, but Pluto's getting to the end of the journey here because it's going to move out of there next year. And at the moment of this full moon, there is a bit of tension to work through. There's a bit of a tight spot that needs to be dealt with. And it could be quite a profound moment. It could be a catalyzing event. It could be like a big sort of volcanic eruption almost. But it's not something that you have not yet experienced because Pluto has been traveling through this area of life for quite a while. So what I want to leave you with is that there is a lot of really nice energy going on in a particular area of your chart, everybody's chart, but for you, that's the second house because Pisces is in the second house for you, right? That's the sweet spot. And that is where the ruler of this full moon is, hanging out right now, Venus, and Venus is exalted in Pisces, like we spoke about in the intro. You've also got Mars there, and Mars is the ruler of Aries, where the sun is at the time of this full moon, exalted in Aries as well. And we also have Jupiter and Neptune coming into a conjunction there, and, they are co-rulers of Pisces. So you have the two benefics, Jupiter and Venus, in your second house of your resources, your personal resources, your money, your time, your energy, what you possess, right? Your material possessions, anything you kind of own. But, and what you place value and worth on, including your sort of sense of self-worth. So this is the sweet spot for you right now, and take advantage of that. Notice where the opportunities are and the goodness is happening. And the one caveat is just don't go overboard. Like when I see all of this stuff happening in the second house, there may be a tendency to kind of like overspend potentially, right? That kind of thing. But all in all, it is really nice energy happening in your second house. So really something to pay attention to. All right, Aquarius, I'm going to leave that there for you. I'm going to move to Capricorn now. Capricorn rising, this full moon is culminating in your 10th house. So it's on this axis of the 10th and the 4th, which is your public life. That's the 10th house. Your authority in the world, your relation to authority and authority figures, the legacy you wish to leave, your career ambitions. That's where the full moon itself is culminating. And then you've got the sun in your 4th house of home, family, roots, ancestry, the legacy you have been left, parents, parenting, emotional security, these real estate, this is 4th house. And so there is something in need of balance here at the time of the full moon, because sun and moon are opposite each other, right? And there is, whatever this is that's culminating, at least in part, was something about it was initiated at the Aries new moon around April 1st. So if you look to that, what came about in relation to those 10th house themes that I just spoke about, but also look back 6 months to the October 6th, 2021 new moon in Libra, which is the 10th house for you, right? Happened in the same area of the chart. What was initiated then? What was instigated? What was conceived of? What seeds were planted around these 10th house themes? And look for that to reach this point of blossoming or culmination or coming to fruition or coming up to be, released or some big moment happening there. And there is some intensity around this full moon because we've got Pluto in a direct square, right? A 90-degree angle to the sun and the moon at the time of this lunation. And so Pluto has been traveling through your sign, Capricorn. You've been feeling it since 2008. Pluto has been doing the big transformation there, alchemizing, right? Like things that directly impact you, like perhaps your physical being in some way, how you interface with the world, how you approach the world, how the world perceives you, your sort of trajectory in life. This has been going through this massive overhaul since 2008 because Pluto has been traveling through there, and it's in this tense conversation now. But Pluto's getting ready to move out of Capricorn. Ooh, you can have a party when that happens. And it's, it's going to do that next year. But there is this moment here where you can feel a little backed into a corner where you have to kind of, something's got to give, right? You need to make a decision, potentially take some action to resolve the tension. But whatever this is, whatever this intensity is, has the potential to be very catalyzing and to really kind of like, you can make a big sort of evolutionary leap sort of thing forward when we're talking about this Pluto energy. And then for you, Capricorn, the sweet spot is in the third house, right? Pisces is in your third house. So we have Venus there, exalted in Pisces. We have Mars there, who is the ruler of Aries, where the sun is currently exalted at the time of the full moon. And we have Jupiter and Neptune meeting up there. We spoke about all these pieces in the intro, so definitely listen to the intro so that you get the full picture. But essentially, this is where, I was saying, like, it's like this warm rain is coming to quench the dry earth almost. That's the sweet spot. So for you, that is things like your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, people that feel like siblings, your peers, your teammates, your community. This can speak to communication, right? The back and forth that takes place every day, whether that's verbal communication or communication that takes place through technology. It can be technological sort of devices and equipment. It can be anything around mobility. It can be travel, short distance travel, usually in the third house. It can speak to education on some level, which is usually we're talking about elementary school, high school, learning the basics of something. These are all third house themes. Third house is a busy place. But something in that arena is looking really good right now. It's really being met with some helpful, pleasant energy, with that conglomeration of planets happening there. So even if there's things going on in life that are feeling sort of particularly tense and intense, look to those third house themes to bring you some relief. Okay, so we're going to leave that there. We're going to move on to Sagittarius. And Sagittarius rising for you, the full moon is culminating in your 11th house. Just have to take a quick sip of water. Thank you. So the full moon, is whatever's coming to pass here, whatever's being illuminated, whatever is reaching a crescendo, it revolves around themes of the group for you. Friends, associates, benefactors, allies, supporters, networks, this kind of thing, your hopes and dreams for the future. These are 11th house themes. There's a full moon moment happening. And whatever this is related to, at least in part, something that was instigated around the time of the Aries new moon on April 1st, around that time, but also back 6 months ago at the Libra new moon, which happened October 6th, 2021, because it happened in the same house. It was the initiatory event that kicked off this cycle, right? That is now culminating. So think back, what was going on around those themes, those 11th house themes for you? And how are you seeing that come into your awareness or reach this kind of full moon moment? And it may also have something to do, because this is an axis. A full moon takes place on an axis because the moon is in one house, the sun is across the sky, and the opposite, right? Which is the 5th house for you. So that is your creative self-expression. That is your hobbies and interests and what brings you pleasure. That can have to do with themes of romance even. It can have to do with children as well, right? And issues around children, your somehow associated with can play in here. And then you've got Pluto in your second house. So Pluto is the intensity surrounding this new moon, full moon rather. Pluto has been in your second house since 2008, really turning up the soil there, really alchemizing things and transforming things. And that is all about your resources, your personal resources, the money you make, from your skills and talents. It is what you own, what you possess. It's about your sense of worth, what you value, and your sense, your sense of self-worth as well. So, whatever happens at the full moon that has to do with these themes, it's not new per se, because Pluto's been there for a long, long time. And you may have to kind of do a retrospective, look back and think about what has really been slowly evolving in this area of my life. And at the moment of the full moon, there's a tight spot to move through. And it can feel like something's got to give here, a bit of a pressure point, right? But dealing with that energy or moving through it can catalyze things and can really kind of like, there can be a bit of a leap forward, or something that's very, cathartic even when we're talking about Pluto. And the other thing is, right, is that we've got all the goodness happening in Pisces. So the fourth house is your sweet spot around this time, because, excuse me, just adjusting here, because that's where we have the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction happening. That's where we have Venus, which is the ruler of this full moon, exalted in Pisces. That's where we have Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, and the sun is in Aries exalted at the time of this full moon, right? So a lot of good beneficial energy happening in the fourth house. And the fourth house is our home, our family, our place of living, our roots, our ancestry, real estate matters, parents. These are all the areas where you should look for the relief, the help, the soft place to land, these kinds of things. This is where the benefits are coming from. So I'll leave you with that, Sagittarius, and I'm going to move on in this instance to, last but not least, is Scorpio. So Scorpio, for you, Scorpio rising, this full moon is culminating in your 12th house. Now, we had a new moon in Aries a couple of weeks ago, around April 1st. So look to there as being like at least one piece of the puzzle. Something was initiated then that's related to what's culminating now. But if you look back 6 months to the October 6th, 2021, new moon in Libra, it's related to that because it's in the same house, right? So what was initiated, what was instigated, what got off the ground, what came into your awareness that has to do with 12th house themes? What are 12th house themes? Well, these are things like retreat. So how we kind of spend time in solitude or away from the world, from the daily kind of grind. So it could be vacation or something around vacation or retreat or solitude. It could be something around endings, culminations, even secrets in the 12th house sometimes. It can have to do with your sort of the unconscious life, your dream life, your connection to spirit, your mental and emotional health, your self-sabotaging behaviors potentially. And in a practical sense, the 12th house can speak to places like retreat centers or, like I said, like even vacation homes really, or things like long-term care facilities, rehab facilities, prisons, anything like that, where you're kind of away from the daily grind of life kind of thing. So that's where the full moon moment is happening, right? Something's coming to pass here. And it's directly related to also the sixth house, because, or the sixth house may be implicated because that's where the sun is across the sky. And that is a house of the daily grind, of health and wellness. Usually, like, we're talking about your physical health, illness, that sort of thing. Issues around that, issues around your work, what you do on the day to day at your job or at unpaid work, how you are in service, issues around pets potentially in the sixth house too can be implicated in whatever's going on here at this full moon. Now, you also have Pluto in your third house, right? So everybody's got Pluto somewhere. And for you, that's Pluto's traveling through the third house since 2008. And that is really churning up the soil there. Pluto is alchemizing this area of life for you. It is really evolving things that have to do with your immediate environment and the people in it, things kind of close to you. So this can be like siblings, cousins, neighbors, community, friends that feel like siblings. It can be your things that go on in your community and your surroundings. It can be having to do with like short distance travel, places you would go in a car probably, or something like that, or on a bus, It could do with technology and vehicles of communication and your communications, on the day-to-day. It is relating to potentially even vehicles in the third house. It could be related to education on some level, which is usually, we're talking about like elementary school, high school, or learning the basics of something. Third house is a very busy place, and Pluto has been doing the slow walk through the third house since 2008. So whatever comes into tension with this full moon, it's not something new to you, because it's things you've been kind of dealing with. If you look back retrospectively, you may notice, if you're not already noticing. But it's a tight spot to work through, but it can be very catalyzing. It can sort of launch you into the future in some way. It can be this like evolutionary kind of leap in some way, right? Or some big kind of something coming up from the surface there, or from under the surface. And then let's leave it on a high note with, where's the sweet spot for you, right? The sweet spot is the fifth house. And that's because Pisces is your fifth house, Scorpio rising. And that is where Jupiter and Neptune are meeting up, right? Co-rulers of Pisces. That's where the ruler of this full moon is, Venus in Pisces, exalted there. That's also where Mars will be at the time of this full moon. And Mars is the ruler of Aries, where the sun is exalted. So I spoke about all those pieces in the intro, and I hope you listen to that, because otherwise you'll sort of miss the context for everything, right? So the fifth house, where the party with the, the hot tub and the sparklers and all the things are happening, the sweet spot, that is about children, your children, other people's children that you're associated with in some capacity, pregnancy, childbearing, creativity, like how you shine out in the world, your creative self-expression and creative projects. It is how you have fun in life, pleasure, romance, anything you do for fun that makes you happy, that you enjoy. It is, I think I covered all the bases there. So those are the themes that are looking really, really pleasant for you around now. And so even if there are moments of intensity, look to that sweet spot, that fifth house, for the relief, right? So I will leave you with that. That is all 12 signs. I hope you got some value from this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, all the things. And I will be back next week with a short astro nugget. And then the week after that, we're diving into the Taurus new moon eclipse, which is taking us into eclipse season. So I'll catch you there. Bye for now. Thanks for joining me.